Three perspectives on three different aspects of the digital world, folks. Let's bring them all together somehow. Let's ask for a quick address, and if you would host the Q&A after you've spoken. Sure. with the audience there. Naeem Zamindar is CEO of ACUMEN Pakistan and board member of youth.
It's such a pleasure being in front of all of you. And what a great morning session we've had. You know, I'm just so excited about the future. I truly believe that we're entering the golden age of mankind. Golden age of mankind. I know that we're going through a lot of challenges, etc. And Pakistan is probably very well positioned to lead this new golden age, right? And I know this is not obvious, but it is true. Change only happens in two circumstances, out of inspiration or desperation. We're in desperate times. We've got great challenges. A country where half the kids don't go to school, 80% of the population not being able to make a decent income, right? We've got huge challenges. We've got law and order issues. But I know that the solutions to these problems lie within us. The technology revolution and the capacity to make these solutions work is within us. It's happening. I've been part of the entrepreneurial space in Pakistan for the last 12 years, and I've seen this whole new generation. You know, it was beautifully said, the generation X and now generation Z coming in, and the kind of energy and entrepreneurial mindset that they bring is really phenomenal. What we really need, right, in this new world order is a different kind of leadership, a leadership which takes ownership for the destiny, which feels a sense of belongingness. And again, very well explained, that this new generation does feel that. They want to live a life of purpose. And that purpose means to take responsibility for more than just the little me, right? It's for the society and the world at large. The level of enlightenedness, right, is determined by the sense of belonging you have. Prophets and saints feel a sense of belonging to everything in the world. They feel that the whole universe belongs to them. Therefore, they look after it. They treat it as their own. And this new generation feels the same sense of belongingness. We are entering an age where the connectedness is creating the sense of ownership to whatever is going on. This is a really disruptive time. I've seen that happen. I mean, ACUMEN, I work for ACUMEN. We invest in leaders, right, fellows. We have a fellowship program where we train 20 people a year. And it's a brilliant program, and Mitsubishi Ando-san has been one of the people who's been funding it. And 20 leaders a year is great, but now with technology, we've developed something called Plus ACUMEN, where we're starting to, in Pakistan alone, develop 50,000 social impact leaders a year, right? People taking courses and learning through that. So technology is disrupting everything. The kind of companies we're investing in, we invested in a company called Nizam Bijli, which is making energy accessible to the poorest of the poor. Through number one, solar energy. Other is through mobile financial services, where a poor person doesn't have to buy a system. He can just pay for it using his mobile phone on a real-time basis. Real disruption starting to happen. In terms of this company that I myself have been advising, in terms of security, right? Mobile phone theft is a huge issue. This company called Verifap, and Amir Jaffrey is sitting right there. He's one of the founders of the company. And they are solving the problem of mobile phone theft using technology, right? There's a solution to it using artificial intelligence, and creativity, right, to find a solution to the problem. They're going to launch very soon, and you'll see a big problem being taken care of. The last one, which is my own personal favorite, right, is a company I myself founded and have invested in. It is called Care Matrix. And it's developing technology for human happiness. You have the capacity, using existing mobile phones and technology, to know your level of happiness, to enable you to deeper states of meditations, to even for behavioral modification. You can know, for example, if you're listening to the news and all the crap of, the fear-mongering, you'll see that your life force will actually go down. It's a measurable phenomenon. When you have the wrong food, when you have a can of Coke, I'm sorry, I know a lot of you love Coke and Pepsi, you'll see your life force, your energy come down. Sugar, right? And when you start doing good, when you help somebody, you do something, you look after someone else, you'll see your life force go up, and it's now a measurable phenomenon. And the technology to make all of this happen, to create a happier world, is starting to come alive. We live in beautiful times. We're going to use this opportunity to, I know, we've talked about the challenges of it, but the opportunity is phenomenal. We need to change our own language. We need to have belief in ourselves. And we are the leaders who will bring about this change. So I just want to leave you with this message that just be excited. Steve Jobs said, be foolish and be hungry. We are both of those, right? We're both foolish and hungry in Pakistan. So let's use this force to create a much better Pakistan and world. And like I said, all these technologies have global potential. So from Pakistan, you will see innovation go out there to change the world, and vice versa. Like, it's the social impact, right? There are 5 billion poor people in the world. It's a huge market. If you can solve the problems of poverty in Pakistan using innovation, just imagine the global marketplace that opens up to us. So with that note, I just want to open it up to question and answer, but brilliant panel, right? And it's coming back to the basics. Ando-san said it beautifully, right? Just to really come back to the humanness, right? The human spirit, to nourish that, to allow that to happen, right? And trust, to build the trust in society. And again, technology can enable trust too, because connectivity and measurability, you can measure trust now. There's ways of looking at your video, you can see how somebody is responding, whether they're really engaging with you or not, right? And it's going to be coming our school soon. And the kind of level of trust where you can't bullshit your way through anymore. Either you're real or you're not. So the world is changing very fast. And this new generation that was talked about, the baby, the baby boomers generation, but the generation Z and X and so much, the whole new world, the kind of energy that they bring and the kind of mindset. And the poorest, by the way, we think this is only a phenomena of the educated, but I've worked with poor people, right? I teach meditation, and you see them. They have the same hopes and aspirations as you and I. They're not very different from us. We imagine that they're different. They just need enablement. And now, with this digital revolution, the enablement is there. It's going to become accessible to everyone. And that's where the hope is. So thank you. And I open it up for questions. Questions? Microphone? Right here. First question. We'll go all the way. We'll go across.
My name is Anis Yunus, and I wanted to ask my friend Endo about the work-life balance. My observation, having traveled in the US many times and living here locally, is that the art of cutting the balance, will it not depend on what profession you are? Because I've seen certain type of stereotypes in, say, IT industry or doctors, and then some business people. So do you think that if you are in a certain trade or profession, then you would be bound to be more living an unbalanced life, to say, for instance? If you are trying to cut a balance, then it may be unbalanced life. Then between the professions, do you agree, or do you think you have a different?
In a way, I'm not idealist, but realist. Balancing is important, but how you balance? Are you going to balance your life in one specific hour, or one specific year, or specific? Are you going to balance your life in when you are 20s or 30s? it's like a business. I mean, when you are 20s, I think that you need to kind of increase your debt, build your asset, so that you can prosper when you are 30s. So when you build your asset, when you build your debt, literally, you may have to sacrifice something. It's always, I think, how are you going to balance yourself in what term? How are you going to balance in a week, what months, year? I think that there are different ways of thinking around it, but that's how I see. So basically, it's choice and priority. And my advice to youngsters, if there are any here, is you have to make up your own decisions. Yeah, your choice, your priority. Not the other, hopefully, to decide your own fate, because I'm not quite sure whether I'm answering your question or not. But so that's what I think.
You're basing it on age. I was trying to base it on profession-wise. Like doctors would be, but you're somewhat covered.
Yeah. Unfortunately, since graduating from university, I have only one profession. I cannot talk on the other professions. But as far as my profession, which is working as a Mitsubishi Corporation's trading house, trading and investment house, this I found myself. I mean that when I was 20s, I worked like anything. And well, do I want to go back to that age? No more. I mean that I sacrificed a lot of things, but benefiting by those sacrifices.
Next question. Let's get a lady next. Any women questions? No, okay. Yeah. So there's a hand there?
I have.
Right there. A young man there. Generation
Z. And
Z, okay.
My question is also about, on the same subject. It's from Ms. Asma Bajwa. You mentioned in your presentation that this generation is risk averse, and at the same time, you mentioned that it has a DIY approach and entrepreneurial aspirations. So how does that go along? Isn't that contradicting? I mean, entrepreneurs, they are not risk averse, they are risk takers, aren't they? So how do these two things get along?
I suppose you could see it like that. I don't see it like that. I don't think they're contradictory. Certainly in terms of the DIY generation, or kind of literally go up to their bedroom and they'll build something if they don't know, or they'll find a way. So there's that mindset. There is that entrepreneurial spirit for sure, and that research shows that. However, in terms of the influences that have shaped this generation, the Great Recession, for example, tend to suggest that they are going to be more risk averse. So that's what the data tells us. So whether those two factors are contradictory, I don't necessarily see it like that, but it's kind of factors that I suppose as time tells and time progresses, we will see as that evolves.
But doesn't entrepreneurship, doesn't the mention of entrepreneurship in itself imply a risk-taking attitude?
I think there's calculated risk
and there's
uncalculated risk as well. So in terms of what your risk appetite is, maybe taking risks that are more calculated will be a feature that we'll see.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
My name is Shahid Zaki, and I am a visiting professor at IBA. Earlier, I was CEO of Philips Pakistan. My question is basically would integrate whatever was done in the first session. It's basically directed towards Helen, and considering work-life balance and so on. So if you talk about accountants, they typically start work when the others have finished the work. So the work-life balance is the biggest issue there. And they work, because they work on lagging indicators as opposed to marketing and sales who work on leading indicators. Now, the most difficult part I've seen in my life is, developing that mindset of entrepreneurship, and especially when you talk about accountants, they have this issue of working within their comfort zone. So how would you develop this? Because it will take lot of efforts to change this paradigm.
Great. So we'll take 3 questions, and then we'll move on. Any other questions? One there, okay, and one here. One lady here. So let's get it from the lady here. Microphone. Green.
Thank you. My name is Anila Salman. I'm from City School. My question to Ms. Asma is, in this well-connected world, can't we find out that what kind of human resource is needed in which part of the world, and we can structure or design a strategy which our young leaders can, make use of?
My question is, again, the survey you did, Asma, was there any insight on the Generation Z's behavior influenced by the consumerism they have been exposed to for past 3-4 decades? I will give you an example that through the consumerism now, every child or every grown-up wants an instant gratification and want it all the time, as compared to the children who grew up in 70s or early 80s, where, take the example, you have one toy and you have to repair it if it breaks, and you will maybe with a couple of or maybe few toys, your childhood will, you will grow through that. As compared to the children who grew up in 2000 and later, where everything is breakable or maybe intentionally through some people think is made to break so that more can be sold. So what impact your survey showed on the behavior of that generation when they grew up? Because that's something which we need to learn how to deal with a mindset which is heavily influenced by consumerism. Any insight on that will be helpful. Thank you.
So we've got 5 more minutes. So the 3 questions that have been asked, if you can divide it amongst yourselves and make your closing comments as well.
If I can just stop the first question.
Push the button on.
The first question, which is about the future role of the accountant, how we shift the contribution to businesses and the economy. I think maybe you perfectly described the past of what an accountant did. In Professional Accountants the Future, the research I talked about there, we talked to thousands of employers globally about what they want. And we identified what we call the quotients for success for the future profession. And at the heart, you still have that ethical and technical competence, which I was talking about earlier, which is still very valued and I think increasingly valued by business and the public. But around that and at various stages of the career, you have the vision quotient, you have the creativity quotient, you have the digital quotient, you have experience. And this is what young people and actually professional accountants throughout their careers are going to need in order to flourish and to support business. What we do about that is ensure that the entire profession has to train and give people the opportunities to acquire those skills both through examination and experience. The examination that we've just introduced through our qualification, Strategic Business Leader, I think the words say it all. The professional accountant has to be there providing the strategic leadership to the organisation, the ethical compass for the organisation that's going to enable it to flourish. So if anybody, and I don't think Generation Z or Generation Next have shown this at all, but if anybody thinks they're going to sit in a back room simply compiling figures in the future, that's completely wrong. They're going to have this much broader skill set that's supporting businesses and helping them to flourish.
I'll start with this question first. The survey that we conducted actually didn't look at the consumer behaviour, actually. It was particularly around what young people that were entering into the world of work would expect, particularly around those areas that I mentioned. So it would be, I wouldn't be able to, I'm sure though, consumer behavior, in terms of product, affects all of these things. So what they've been exposed through, in terms of growing up, toys, things that how they access information, how they learn, will of course influence those behaviors. And that's, I think, one of the slides did talk about what has shaped that different generations and that particularly Generation Z. So it would be wrong of me to kind of comment more around kind of consumer behavior. Going back to the lady's question here, if I can just clarify, the question was around identifying the right resources for different, could you just repeat the question for me? Sure. I think it's really important for human resources departments, functions, actually to play an active role at a leadership table in terms of understanding where the organization is headed and therefore what are the competency requirements to deliver that, the capability, how do you grow and develop the capability of the organization. So it's really important for us to understand, somebody mentioned it this morning, that if we're, everything is digitizing, what are the skill sets that we're looking for? It's not the traditional. I'll give you an example. In my previous career back in the UK, I was with British Airways, and when, I don't know if any of you have flown through Terminal 5, it's a very different airport experience, where once the whole job design was being developed and the skills were being identified of what would be needed for people serving customers at the airport, they weren't going to be sitting behind the desk anymore. It was very much around, hosting people, receiving them, self-service. So the skill set and the competencies that they then started to look for in the people that served those customers was very different. So you have to redefine the competency requirements of what it is you're trying to deliver. So I think it's really important to be aware of where are you headed, and therefore what is the skill set and competency. Somebody else I think has talked about it this morning around having a leadership program where competencies of the future are being identified, and I think it was in Engro, they were talking, the CEO was talking around how to embed those competencies into future leaders. So I think keeping foresight and keeping ahead of what's going to be required is a very important fact.
Can I just to add to that, because I think it's sometimes too late if you wait until people are in the business as well. I mean, we have to be looking at schools, universities, and government policies in relationship to shaping those competencies. And with the huge, youth dividend that there is here in Pakistan, I think making sure that the investment is being made in the right way to produce those kinds of competencies and skills is absolutely critical.
I think also collaboration with, schools and educational institutions from a very early age to develop particular competencies is going to be important.
Like back in India, right now, they're teaching 2 different languages in their schools to the students because they know that after 10 years or 12 years, that country is going to need human resources.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a prediction that they have made over there.
I think it's a very important consideration at that very early stage, as you say, even before you get to the workplace, in terms of where are we headed and what do we need. It's kind of, I think from my experience, and I've never lived in Pakistan, but planning, for example, is a real, regardless of which area you're in, planning is a real competency requirement that, will help you in any deficiency that I've noted in a lot of things that I've come across here. So simple things like that.
Thank you. Understand?
Yeah. As I talked before, the boundaries are disappearing between work and life. So boundary was consisted of the place and the time. Place, you may not need office anymore. I mean that flex time is, I think, going to be disrupted. I mean that you will not be paid by the time you devoted to the company, but you will get paid based on the output. So what time you work becomes irrelevant soon enough. And place, obviously, we have the remote office and this and that. So where you stay, where you do your work, or when you do becomes totally irrelevant, and you will be only judged by the quality of your output. That's tough. I would rather spend more time to get paid more, but that's how the life goes. Yeah.
Thank you very much. It's been a great session. And I hand it over to my colleague.
Naeem, thank you very much indeed. Show your appreciation, please, for Naeem and his panel. And before we go, we'd like to make a presentation of thanks to the panel. And to do that, I'll invite a couple of special guests up onto the stage. Michael Foley, CEO of Grameen Phone, please join me. And Agha Zafar Abbas, Chairman of Kansai Paints. Please step up onto the stage, because we just want to make a small gift, a token of appreciation.
Absolutely.
Michael, if you could make your presentation to Asma to start. And next to Helen, if you would. And the second presentation will be made by Agha Zafar Abbas to our other two panel members. And while we're here, please, Azhar, join me on the stage for the group photograph.
Special for